Basically, I want to jump on and very quickly talk about what's on my mind. I think basically there are three things that we want to talk about in this video. We want to talk about some of the earnings expectations that are coming up, some of the macroeconomic events and the market outlook moving into the week ahead, and then we want to give you some portfolio updates as well. Okay, so if we're going to dive very quickly into earnings, right, I think I want to say that for Tesla, because their Q2 deliveries came in strong, they also basically reported that they deployed more solar than expected. So I think for a lot of analysts, they actually expect higher revenue. However, one of the things about Tesla actually is that their margins are actually contracting year over year. So we want to see what are the effects on margins. And so basically we also want to listen to them to see whether or not they give us an update on the more affordable vehicle as well as their FSD update. So in the upcoming quarter, normalized EPS of 62 cents, GAAP EPS 49 cents, revenue estimate $24 billion. So basically, if you look at the analysts, they're actually quite split. About 13 analysts revised their expectations up, 13 analysts revised their expectations down over the last 90 days. Okay, and the second company we want to talk about is Alphabet or Google. So in terms of expectations, I think we spoke about it in the previous video that I'm going to link up above. I talk about that in a bit more detail in that video. But just on a high level, EPS expected $1.84, revenue expected about $84 billion. So over the last 90 days, we see 34 analysts revising their EPS upwards, only one analyst revising downwards. So apart from just the numbers in the company, we want to know how the business is doing. The first thing we want to look at for is basically the AI software updates on Gemini Live and Project Astra. I think we want to see basically how they are continuing to integrate AI into their offerings so that they can continue to compete with what Microsoft is doing. And I think the most important component for Google at the moment is their cloud growth. So basically, like I was mentioning in the previous video, the cloud growth basically is a very high margin business and it reduces the cyclicality of their revenue because they're very heavily based on ads. So analysts expect cloud revenue of about 10.2 billion. And so that's what we're going to be looking out for and to see whether or not they can improve margins from there. Right. And then apart from that, I think the last thing, which is something I personally want to look out for, is YouTube revenue as well. So if you remember, management actually tells us that YouTube and cloud growth should actually generate 100 billion in terms of revenue exiting 2024. So we want to see progress in that area. For our third company, Enphase, right, we actually already have quite low expectations coming into the quarter. Expectations are basically to decline in revenue and earnings. So you can see, right, in terms of the normalized EPS estimate, that's about 48 cents. EPS gap is about 10 cents, and revenue estimate is only $309 million. So when you look at the revisions, 24 analysts actually revised their EPS expectations downwards over the last 90 days. So people are generally quite bearish and going into earnings, which sometimes can be a good thing because as long as you beat expectations, then there's a chance that the stock price will run. However, I think for Enphase, I think more importantly is guidance from Q3 onwards, because if you actually just listen to my previous video, I was talking about how a lot of the growth and the demand for Enphase really depend on rate cuts. And if we're expecting rate cuts to come sometime in September or even end of the year, we want to see how management are looking at things. So that is something that will actually help us to inform us about what we're going to do with our position that we have in our portfolio regarding the puts, whether or not we want to roll them out or actually to get assigned the shares and then sell calls on them. So that is something we'll talk about later on in this video. I think the fourth company we want to talk about is Visa. Actually, Visa, I don't have much that I'm looking at. It gives me some sort of expectations for PayPal, which is actually the new position in the portfolio. But for me, more importantly, it actually shows me the strength of the consumer. Right? So EPS, I think expectations quite standard around $2.41. Revenue estimate 8.9 billion. Most analysts actually revised their EPS downwards over the last couple of days. Only one analyst revised EPS upwards. And so I think one of the most important thing that we can gain from Visa's earnings is basically understanding the strength of the consumer, and how that is important is because we want to understand the market outlook. So if we were to look at the indexes in the last week, the Dow was up 0.7%, but the S&P was down 2%, Nasdaq was down 3.6%, and even though the IWM small caps was up during the start of the week, we actually ended the week down about 5%. So basically, the IWM fell into the last 3 days of trading and basically over the last 5 days, they fell about 5%. So could a weaker consumer and weaker Q3 earnings signal a more serious problem in the economy? I think that is something that we do need to pay attention to, which is why I say Visa's earnings is quite important as well as some of these big tech earnings. So in terms of the rest of the economy, we get GDP on Thursday, 5th of July, and PCE, which is the Fed's preferred inflation gauge, on Friday, 26th of July. And so that will give us a bit of an insight into what we can expect from the Federal Reserve moving forward. Hi, this is Future Elijah coming to you because when I was editing, I realized I actually missed out covering two things in the initial recording. So the first thing I want to talk about is GDP. Now, GDP in Q1 came in at 1.4%, and in Q2, it is expected to come in at about 1.9%. So basically an expansion in GDP. And that's important. Why? Because it affects one of the companies that we're holding, and I'll talk about it in a bit. The second thing is on Friday, the PCE report, we're actually expecting month over month to come in at 0.1%. And year over year to come in at 2.5%. Now, how does this affect the portfolio that we are holding, right? Because one of the biggest holdings at the moment in the portfolio is SoFi. And basically, SoFi projected their business this year based on contracting GDP. So as long as GDP is increasing, we can actually expect that it's a better environment for SoFi's business to operate in, and they are likely to beat expectations lah. At the same time, for PCE, because SoFi actually operates a very large lending segment that they are actually intentionally controlling right now, as PCE comes down, which shows the Federal Reserve that inflation is coming down, coming under control, they are likely to start reducing rates, whether or not it's in September or later on in the year. And that will basically help to accelerate SoFi's lending segment again. And so with that, back to the video. And finally, we want to come to the portfolio update. So basically just two very quick things that I want to talk about. The first thing I want to talk about is the Enphase position. Initially, I was hoping to close it out before earnings. I don't think it's possible now. Now, the thing is, I don't mind taking assignment of these shares and selling calls against the position. So I'll actually go through the math behind basically these different moves and the options, and to show you my thought process in a video later on in this week. But actually, right now, all I'm doing is that I'm waiting for earnings to decide if I should roll out the put to a later date or just take assignment of the shares come Friday if the stock price actually goes below 105. So like I said, I will do the math for you to take you through my thought process come the end of the week, and then to basically come to a decision together lah. Finally, we actually started a new position in PayPal, as you can see over here. I expected to close NEO this week, so PayPal will become the official third position in this portfolio. At the moment, I just actually started the position with 20 shares. I hope to buy more. However, I need to keep some spare cash on the side in case of assignment of the Enphase shares later this week lah. So basically, once we look at the Enphase earnings on Tuesday, that's why I say Tuesday is a very important day. We'll have a better idea, gain a bit more clarity on what to do with these Enphase shares, how to manage the options contract, and then we can have a better idea on whether or not we are able to purchase more PayPal shares, because I would love to buy more PayPal under $60. And I'll definitely be walking you through my thought process on PayPal later this week, and at the same time to give you a better understanding on what I'm going to do with my Enphase position, and I'll see you in the next one.